Hello, my name is Cinepresto, and as you know, I love interviewing voice actors. I'm also known for having played Okabe Rintaro in that little skit from 5 years ago. But today, we have a very, very special guest. What's that? He's here. Introducing to our channel the one, the only, the insane mad scientist of Steins Gate's English dub, J. Michael Tatum. You've heard his voice on One Piece, Attack on Titan, My Hero Academia, but perhaps audiences in my channel know him best as one of the writers for Steins Gate and being the one, the only, the voice of Hououin Kyouma. Welcome to the channel, J. Michael Tatum. Thank you so much. And I guess we'll just call you Michael just to keep things simple. So we talked a little bit about that.
Right. Yeah, please. If I'd have known 20 years ago, J. Michael Tatum would be so difficult. I'd be like, why the hell did I choose that? But
It's
thanks for having
okay.
me. This is really fun. I always
It
love the
adds
chance to
the
talk about
elegance to
Steins Gate.
your name, right? It adds that flair, right?
It does. So, true story. The reason I have that initial, it does stand for a real first name. My first name is John. I've just never gone by it. Everyone in my family tends to go by the middle name. So, but there's a lot of Michael Tatums in North Texas. It turns out. I don't know why. It's just a very common name, and we're not related. It's just a name you find everywhere. So when I started doing this, they were like, "Hey, you want to be credited as Michael Tatum, or is there some other name?" And I was one of the first actors I met, who's now a very dear friend, was R. Bruce Elliott, who's a wonderful actor and also very, very encouraging in my early days as a little bitty baby actor. And so I was like, "Ooh, can I do like J. Michael Tatum? That sounds classy." I didn't think it would be a career. I thought it would just be like, I thought this was my one anime I'd ever do. And here I am 20 years later, and people called me Jay or J. Michael or Tatum. They just don't know. Give them an initial, and it's a trap. So I apologize, everyone. It's literally just Michael. It's
Well, that's how
just
it
Michael.
starts. It's the bug of voice acting and the bug of picking your name, right? So I'll tell you a little secret. This is an exclusive for my channel. My name's not actually Presto. It's actually Preston.
Oh,
So,
you just forget the
no one
N
no one
one
would
day when
guess.
filling
Yeah,
out a
at least
form.
you have some flair to yours, right? So
I like Presto. It's a good name.
yeah,
Presto is
it works
good. It's
for the flair, like it's the
yeah,
prestidigitation.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
stuttering over myself already. Thanks for making me nervous. All right. So usually we get right into the questions, but today I've decided to open this up a little bit as more of a chat between us because naturally Steins Gate's a personal and very beloved thing to me as well as my audience, but naturally also to you. And I've decided to release this episode on Okabe Rintaro's birthday, December 14th.
Oh,
He
oh,
is, as of
nice.
today, 32 years old, but today also marks the fifth anniversary of the live stream I got to partake in with Spike Chunsoft. Um, you've obviously written for the character.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've gotten to play him just like not in any official capacity, but kind of for the live streams and whatnot. So
yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, if, can you tell me a little bit about what this character means to you in particular?
Oh, what a big question. Um, it's hard to sum up, and I think that's part of what makes him such a gift to have played. I think as an actor, I've always liked a challenging character, ones that are kind of impossible to sum up, who kind of run the gamut. And, and he's such a big, larger than life character, but at the same time, he's so real and, which seems odd to say about him because he's so over the top and presentational. But, the show gives us a chance to see him in much more vulnerable moments. And so, he's just this huge character. I mean, he contains multitudes, as the saying goes. And I had never, in my career as a voice actor, until Okabe came along, or Hououin Kyouma, if you prefer,
Mhm.
um, uh, I had never encountered a character that complicated, that emotional. I mean, I'd played, and I'd gotten to hoist my flag on a number of really, really cool roles. Don't get me wrong, but Okabe was such a unique person. Of all the people that I have, whose stories I've been drawn to, and I think for me, I have to kind of sum him up professionally. He's the one that changed my view of what voice acting could be. Because I come from a stage background, and just voice acting is light years beyond stage in terms of well, that's a whole other conversation. But
Mhm.
so it's very rare that you get to sink your teeth into a role in quite the same way as you do on stage or even sometimes on camera. And voice work is just a little more streamlined. It's a little more, takes place in a booth like this, which is
Mhm.
essentially a, sensory deprivation tank. And so it's harder to connect with your character sometimes because you're not given a lot of help. There's no props. We're not even acting off of each other in the booth during in a dub. It's not possible. So, I'd always kind of, I don't want to say I was guarded when voice acting. I didn't approach it the same way as I would approach a role on stage. It just requires different tools and a slightly different mindset. But Okabe was the first character I encountered where I'm like, I need all of my training as an actor on stage, everything for this role because he is so complicated and so vulnerable and goes through so much. Um, that it really kind of it was so exhausting in so many ways, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we continue. But it was so exhausting. I actually took a break from voice acting for the better part of a year afterwards because
Wow.
I needed to I had to like, oh, that's too much. I had never really needed in the booth to find a boundary between myself and the character. It was always pretty explicit, and but Okabe was so close to me, also because I was helping write his dialogue, that
Mhm.
I that 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 very important line between Michael and Okabe was beginning to evaporate, and I had to be like, no, 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 we need to find Michael again. I'm gonna maybe not act for a little while. We're gonna take a
Wow.
little mental health sabbatical, which I did. And but yeah, so Okabe. So as you can tell, my feelings for Okabe are as complicated as he is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I obviously, going back to just like 5 years ago when I decided to perform this skit and everything. I was obviously a huge fan of your work. I watched your dub first before I went back to the original sub. So
Oh well, thank you.
each part of it is equal to that experience to me.
Oh,
And I
oh,
think the thing that I
shucks.
really connected to is that he's such a walking contradiction, right? It's like
He
that's the
is.
best way I describe him. It's like he's cool in his mind, and then he gets undercut immediately by the dynamics of the other characters that are reflected
He's
and part of his
so
lab.
and that's what makes him so real is that I think real people are that complicated in real life,
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
he's really good. He's something of a I like to say that he's a bad chameleon. Like he feels the need to change himself depending on the context he's in, but it
Right.
never works. It never quite
Yeah.
works.
Mhm.
And that's what makes him such an interesting character to see. Like he never really fits in anywhere until he is 100% vulnerable and real, until he is the until he is the very person he doesn't want to be.
Right. Yeah.
Is he able to move forward? It's
Yeah.
it's crazy. Um, but yeah, but I think who can't relate to that when it comes right down to it? And I think we all put up a
Right.
front. We
Yeah.
all we all adopt different strategies for getting through things that we don't feel we're good at. And I think that's kind of the heart of Okabe's character is that he
Mhm.
just doesn't feel like he belongs, and weirdly that gives him permission to be this over the top character. He's like, well, no one cares.
Right.
No one cares what I do.
Mhm.
I'm nothing. So why can't I be
Right.
this crazy over the
Yeah.
top mad scientist type?
Yeah.
It's he's almost learned to find a little bit of freedom in his
Mhm.
outsider status, which I can
Yeah.
also relate to.
Mhm.
And but then so when things get real though, it's like, oh, I'm not sure that this works anymore. It's fascinating to watch him. I've never known a character to change more
Mhm.
from moment to moment, but while also still maintaining this kind of core element that
Mhm.
you can identify. Oh, that's Okabe in a heartbeat.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it takes two words to realize. Oh, I'm talking to Okabe,
Yeah.
regardless of what mode he's in.
Right, yeah. That's what grounds the character and allows him, on as an extension of that, to really be able to bring this group of other weirdos who may not view that they have much value in themselves
Hmm.
together, right? Even though none of them fit in quite the same way. So, I mean,
Right, right.
I imagine you love doing that in real life too. Just bring like, this doesn't make sense at all. These two people don't make sense, but let me see what happens, right?
I mean, I've always been drawn to found family, and found
Yeah.
family tends to be made up of misfits. Um, one of the details creatively that I love about their little act that they all have together, the members of the Future Gadgets Laboratory, is that they call it the Future Gadgets Laboratory. The implication being that now's not our time, but we're waiting. We're waiting for
Mm.
when people will see us for what we are. and value that in some way. So it's almost like they enable each other, being together, they enable each other to be patient with their misfit status, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
Like, don't
Wow.
worry, they're biding their time, which is beautiful. What a beautiful,
Right.
bonding agent. Apart from just them all loving to watch Okabe wear himself out constantly. Because he's definitely that guy.
Yeah.
He's that guy that they keep around because they're like, we don't know what he's going to say next, and he's probably going to annoy the hell out of me, but this
Yeah.
is fun to watch.
That is probably why they keep him around, especially Daru.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, Daru's
probably
like,
in that
please do something. And, like, he's never boring. He's never boring.
Yeah, at least something will happen.
He's a bit
we
of
don't have anyone better to hang out with.
right, and he's a bit of a lovable buffoon. I think in some sense, sometimes maybe like Daru, I could see that dynamic being like, I mean, I like hanging out with him because he makes me feel better about myself because hey, at least I'm not Okabe. And then they have kind of a grudging respect for each other at the same time.
Right.
Even Mr. Braun, who really doesn't like having them as tenants, I think thinks of them as like, I think would miss them if they were gone, would miss them if someone far more boring took that space above the shop.
Right.
But yeah, so it's interesting. As you could tell, I could ramble about this forever because the characters are all so well conceived.
And it was such a part of your life. I have to call attention back to the point that you made about it being called the Future Gadget Laboratory. It's just like it's easy to overlook that as just like, oh, that's what they're called. But then you thought about it to that degree that, yeah, that reflects just what they're going to become, right? And the potential of that.
And there's so many details like that provide through lines for the entire show that aren't necessarily plot related. Although all the plot related stuff is solid and amazing as well. It is easily one of the best crafted stories I've ever gotten to be part of in some way. It is such a and it holds up well. I'm in the midst of showing it to some friends who've never seen it before.
Nice.
And we're going slow.
Nice.
They like to take notes.
Yeah. We are on the cusp of a rewatch with my group of friends too. I have to rewatch it every year and a half. It's just a rule. I don't make it. That's
great. That's awesome. No,
I think it needs to be studied in English classes or like some college level course. They have Star Trek classes. We'll talk about Star Trek. Obviously.
I think it can sustain that kind of scrutiny because I mean, it's
the structure is just perfect.
The structure is perfect. The concept. I even think the way they handle the sci-fi element of how the mechanics of time travel is probably one of the most convincing I've ever seen.
Right.
In sci-fi, it's just so good, and the amount of planning and world building that went into it. I mean, right down to I remember when Steins Gate 0 was coming down the pike. I was like, oh God, I'm dreading it. This is such an emotional minefield, and it's only been 7 years. Oh God, what do I do? And I remember going back and watching it for the first time in a couple of years, and Suzuha's last line to Okabe as spoilers, as she is disappearing in the time machine, as she says, "I'll see you in 7 years," and it was 7 years later.
Oh wow, you're right.
They've always known what they were doing.
They've planned this out.
It's insane. This is it's a work of genius, in my opinion, and I'm so humbled that people even care that I'm in it, because it's not about me or my contribution. The story would have been amazing if anyone did it. All you need is a competent actor and a writer, and the story will do all the heavy lifting for you.
I vehemently disagree that you haven't become an integral part of it, because that all that writing and performing, they don't, those are easy things to overlook. But if you don't connect with the characters, none of that matters, right? All the structure.
I mean, but who couldn't connect with those characters, right?
Yeah.
And I have to give all the writing credit I have to give to Patrick Seitz, who I think everything good about the writing really started with him. And ended with him, because I mean, I was just kind of following his lead, so to speak. I mean, I may have been the lead writer on paper, but Patrick was by far the more experienced, and his skill, he was so attuned to those characters, particularly Mayuri. I'll tell this story really quick on the subject of how we approached adapting certain characters. I, in the early stages of writing the adaptation, had real trouble getting my head around how to adapt Mayuri in English, because it's a trope that can be very annoying in English. The kind of the wide-eyed innocent type. but she cannot be a source of humor. She can't be made fun of, and I tended to make her, without necessarily meaning to. Patrick noticed that I was writing her to be a little too witty, a little too sarcastic, the way Okabe and Daru were with each other. Because my thinking was like, well, she's been around them enough, that she'd pick up some of those traits. And Patrick argued, rightly, absolutely rightly, that no, she needs to be the innocent. Like, she doesn't quite read sarcasm, or at least doesn't value it. And that's kind of the heart of her character. So the way we approached, writing Mayuri, who is the heart and soul of Okabe's journey, even more so than the other characters, including Christina, who's of course integral to it. But Mayuri is, and her innocence, and her, how did Patrick say it? He wrote me this beautiful email that I've kept, and he was like, Mayuri is just one of those people that with no exoskeleton, and yet that somehow has managed to survive in this very cruel, cold world. And that she somehow she's a survivor of trauma, and yet it hasn't turned her into this twisted, mean-spirited, or even very anxious creature. It's like we don't, and it makes her such a beautiful mystery in so many ways. And once Patrick talked about that with me, I began to kind of understand how best to bring her into English. So like it would have been a very, very different show, and I don't think nearly as successful an adaptation if I hadn't listened to Patrick.
Yeah. And props off to Matsubara-san and Shikura. Curse you guys! For like taking our heart and just crumpling it into a little ball, because she really is the emotional center of that group. She's emotionally intelligent in a way that the others aren't, even though
she really
functionally, and she doesn't see that value in herself too. At least at certain points of the story, until tragically later that'll happen. So I guess we'll mark off straight away that this is going to be a spoiler interview. I guess I didn't make that clear with Trina.
It's kind of hard to talk about it for any length of time without spoilers. Otherwise, it'd just be us going like, "Isn't it great? Isn't it awesome? It's pretty awesome."
I'm so glad it was that. Honestly, though, I'm still glad that we didn't set that up in the other interview, because we ended up with a lot of hilarious situations where Trina was trying to like skirt around it, and I was just dying watching her do backflips from her iPad trying to get that right.
It's very entertaining to watch.
Well, you did it, and then straight up the other questions were straight up spoiler questions. So we're gonna put a tag on that, and this will be published on Kiri Kiri Basara, the science adventure publication. So shout out to them as well. Please check out the article that they will have put together. I guess next I have a personal question for me, because you did congratulate me on the email of the performance and skit I did do with the character. Big thanks. It means a lot to have that acknowledged. But how did that end up on your radar? I didn't send it to you. I was like, how did you see this? I was like,
I do my research.
Oh no,
Trina. Trina. When Trina introduced you to me, I was like, oh yeah, cool. I don't do just a whole lot of interviews. I'm a bit of a recluse, to be honest.
So thank you for coming out here. Yeah.
No. I mean, you came so highly recommended by Trina, and after seeing that interview, I was like, okay, let's look this up. And so I saw, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, and I love, honestly, one of my favorite things when I go to conventions, and it happens every time. I meet somebody who is cosplaying Okabe, or I meet a group of people that are cosplaying all the future Gadgets laboratory members, and and they're into it, and it's so awesome. It's such a fun cosplay, and because it's such a simple cosplay, it's literally a lab coat and a gray shirt. Right.
Guilty as charged.
So I noticed the cosplayers really put everything into the performance, and so I don't know. I just feel so connected to them. As an actor, that's what kind of draws me to the craft.
Continue. Yes.
I should tell everyone I'm drinking DK pepper.
Yes, continue. We're not sponsored out here.
The chosen Soma of the Cognizetti.
Right.
But I love it. I get really, I feel so connected to people with whom I feel like I share a role, even if, someone's cosplayed it and this person's played it in Japanese, or this person's played it in French or whatever. I don't really have a competitive bone in my body when it comes to that kind of thing. I'm like, isn't it cool? We're all part of Okabe's life. Isn't that awesome? We're family.
That's
so I love that. I love that kind of stuff, especially if it's a character that means so much to me. And like I said, I went on a very difficult journey with Okabe, a very, very personal one that I am very, very proud of the work we all did on that show. And I think it is easily the best thing I've ever gotten to do. But it was hard. It cost a lot. It took its toll uh, in my personal life as well. And not. I mean, I'm not trying to sound dramatic or anything like that. But it's hard to work the way I worked on that show for as long as I did without it kind of bleeding over into my day-to-day life. And like I said, I had to take kind of a mental health sabbatical from voice acting for a little while
Yeah.
afterwards, just because I was like, no, this is too much. It was a lot. I mean, that's kind of it was a learning curve for me. And so it's impossible to have, I think, to have had such an intense experience with something and not feel connected to people that are also drawn to it, that also feel
Right.
like, oh, I love this character, like it really speaks to me, And it's everyone that I've met that loves Okabe loves him because of what he's gone through, not for the reasons Okabe would prefer to be loved by. Do you know what I
That's
mean?
true.
Okabe
Yeah.
wants to be
Yeah.
seen, at least in the early part of his character, like he
Yeah.
wants to be seen as a genius, an evil, and a leader, and
Yeah.
all that. But
The
like
cool
what
one,
you end
right?
up loving
Yeah.
him
Mad
for
scientist.
is all the things that he would love not to have had to do.
Right. That is
you
that
know,
is true. Yeah.
so so I really I don't know. I know I'm gonna cry at least once in this interview. I know.
Oh no.
I
Oh
apologize in
no.
advance.
Mm.
But yeah, like I said, we're watching it with friends now. We're rewatching it with friends.
Yeah.
Two who've not seen it before, and there are scenes I have to leave the room for because I'm like, nope, can't do that. Can't do that. Too
Yeah.
raw. Too raw. 15 years later.
Right.
Or however long, 12 years, 50 something.
Right. Yeah.
What is time?
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
let me tell a really quick story. Sorry, I don't know. This is all over the map, and I apologize.
Go
But it's
for it.
like
Go. No, it's
Okabe.
totally fine. No, we welcome this.
Maybe you can begin to see why I was chosen to act him. uh, but I met a young man who was going to grad school for engineering, and he was at a convention, and he was a lovely guy. He had the lab coat on and everything, and we had this wonderful conversation about the show and about like the time travel mechanics and all that, which fascinate me. And he was much better at understanding them and explaining them than I will ever be. And this was after the first, after Steins Gate came out.
Mhm.
I'd say by about a year, and then fast forward, 7 years, and we're working on Steinsgate 0, which if you like, we can go into a little later, was probably one of the darkest times in my professional life.
Oh,
I
okay.
almost didn't reprise the role.
Mhm.
For a variety of reasons.
Mhm.
And then I met this guy again at a convention, and he gave me, a gift, and he had built a working divergence meter
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
cathode tubes and everything,
Oh my gosh.
at that as his thesis.
Yeah.
And he built one for himself, and then he gave me one, and like I just broke down and cried. I
Yeah.
just was like, "Ah!"
Yeah.
I was like, I gotta do it. I gotta reprise the
Yeah.
role.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. So it's kind of it's crazy.
Yeah.
No, I should hasten to add, that's not what made me reprise the role, but that
Right.
is what made me feel I had made the right choice to reprise the
Right.
role,
Mhm.
because I'd
Yeah.
already reprised the role by then, but I was not in a good place about it.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was a
Well,
lot.
shout out to
It
the.
was
Yeah.
it was rough, but this guy that loved it enough that he was like literally made a divergence meter as his thesis for a
Yeah.
master's degree in
Mhm.
engineering. Like how cool is that? Like
Right. Yeah.
what is my life? What is anything?
Yeah. People are getting that inspired to the point that they're willing to make shifts in their career and to
You
like
know,
delve into it. It's yeah, it's it's
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
you know,
I'll always meet at least one that says, "Yeah, I'm doing science and
yeah,
because of
yeah.
Steins Gate." So
I know.
yeah,
Maybe someone's out there working on time travel right now because they
maybe they're
watched
watching it
Steins
just
Gate. They're
because.
like,
Yeah.
maybe.
Really never know.
Maybe
Yeah,
not.
I mean, I think the favorite, on that topic of connecting with people, who have just love this stuff so much, that the best part of that whole experience for me doing that skit was like getting the chance to see everyone else perform too, and um then see, this is why I have my camera, which will shut off randomly, so that way it makes sure that I can cry
You've
off
said too
camera.
much. CERT is on to you.
Yeah.
They're shutting you down. No.
It's the organization. Um, but yeah, it's just, when you do it, it's like I locked myself in my room for like 3 days just to like get in the mindset that like and it was just rehearsing over and over again.
Relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. The next part of that was like I wanted to like take that and then like use whatever little chance we had to like try to get the other games localized and um
Yeah.
just bring this games to like more people
so cool.
if
I
anything.
know.
And
We're so cool.
we're at where we're at now, where science adventure is probably in the best place it's been, just period. Like the games are coming out for international audiences, and
Yeah, and I've noticed that there's been an uptick in new people discovering the anime.
right, yeah, we don't have an
Maybe because
anime
it's
now,
on
but
streaming or whatever, and it's kind
yeah,
of
they're going
like
back to it.
it's really cool that people are discovering it for the first time, and so it has enormous staying power. I mean, it was always kind of popular, but had a dedicated, if somewhat smaller than you might expect, fan base. But it's just continued to grow without
Mhm.
really ever stopping in all
Right.
these years, which is kind of unusual and very encouraging. I love
Hmm.
that. I
Yeah,
love that. I
absolutely.
love that's the great thing about streaming is that people find new stuff and hey, it's new to
Yes.
them. Who cares
Yeah.
if it came out yesterday or if it's from the future?
Right.
You know.
Can, can we take it back to the beginning by any chance, where we just imagine that moment where you got cast as this character? I want to know what this process was like. Were you asked to write it first and
Hmm.
then brought on for?
Yeah.
And we have 10 minutes left, but we'll do it anyways. So we can.
So I'll try to tell the story quickly. So the way it used to work in the old days is the lead writer, John Bergmeyer, who was the
Mhm.
lead writer for Funimation at the time, he liked Patrick and I as a team, and he was like, this show is absolutely tailor-made for you, so go ahead and write it. And we used to write usually the first 4 or 6 scripts before they even auditioned. We had the time to. So before the simuldub process, and
Right.
so Patrick and I worked on it together. And I had zero intention of even auditioning for it because I was like, man, I do not want to. I don't like being in things that I've also written if I can help it, because it's too stressful. There's
Mm.
literally no one to blame but me if something doesn't work. And but Colleen Klinkenbeer, the dub director, she was like, "You have to audition for this. You have to audition for it." And I don't say no to Colleen. I'm not stupid. Uh, so I auditioned for it, thinking, no, this is not my role. This is not my role. I actually hope it's not my role because I don't want that responsibility. And it was my role. So I kind of resisted it at first, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, this will be really, oh God, because I knew from that point forward, we only had the first, I think, maybe 6 scripts completed by the time we started recording. So the rest of the time, I'd go in to record and then be also working on the scripts, for the next episodes. And so I was kind of living Okabe's reality in a way
Mm.
because
Hmm.
I'd be revisiting the same
The time
scenes
loop.
over and over
Yeah.
again,
Over and over.
from a different perspective, either as an actor or a writer, and so it got really, not confusing. It really just put me in the mindset of the character in a way that I think really helped the performance. But again, like I can't stress enough how much I did not want to play Okabe. As much as I loved him and I thought he was a great character, I thought, no, I can't do justice to that. That's too much pressure. I'm also like, I focused on the writing. I wanted to make it the best scripts, some of the best scripts I'd ever written, as
Hmm.
as did Patrick. And so we were focused on the writing, and I was like, man, I do not envy the poor bastard that has to breathe life into these lines because I'm pulling out all the stops. Oh shit, it's me. um and then Patrick's like, nope, you can't pull back, we gotta go. And so I did it. It was a harrowing experience, but I learned to love it. I mean, but it was, like I said, it was an exhausting process, and it cost me a lot in my personal life because I'm like, oh, I'm writing this incredibly intense show with a lot of emotional incidents, and I'm also playing this character, so I'm like getting to relive all these things because I get emotional when I'm writing. I act it out as I'm writing. I think that's part of the adaptive writer's job. And so I'm acting it again, and then now I'm in the booth doing it, and I'd be like, wait, is today the day? Wait, did that already happen? No, that we did. Oh, fuck, where are we? And, it became real, and I had a breakdown in the booth because of it at one point because I was so tired and also just so emotionally frazzled from living in this reality.
Hmm.
Uh, like I said, totally worth it in the long run.
Hmm.
I'd never encountered that level of intense connection to a show before, and it was not something I was prepared for.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds actually nuts. I think you're one of the few actors that has been like, I don't want this role, and then you got it. It's just,
I know. I just
I know.
it's so it's zen. It's so zen. They say it's zen. I'm like, no, I really don't want the role. Oh, I got it anyway. Okay. I mean, I don't mean to sound falsely humble. Like there are many roles I want and I go out for them.
Right.
But this was one I was like, no, man, it's too much stress to write it and to also
Yeah.
perform it. I didn't think I'd had it in me. I'd never done it before,
Right.
to that extent. And I was like, no, this is too big of a character for me to have all that
Yeah.
responsibility. Colleen, thankfully disagreed and convinced me otherwise. And her direction is so good. She
Yeah.
took such good care of all of us in the
Yeah.
booth with that really fraught material,
Yeah.
that I think had it been anyone else, and later Chris George, who directed Steins Gate Zero, who
Mhm.
was an engineer for a time on the
Right.
original one
Yeah. Wow.
when he started. So he was also very connected and took really good care of all of the
Yeah.
actors with that material, which is not an easy feat. I know Trina had some crazy emotional moments bringing Christina to life, or
Mhm.
Kurisu to life. Excuse me. Um, as did Tyson, as did Jeremy Lee as Suzuha, which is one of my
Mhm.
favorite performances of
Yeah.
hers. Uh,
Absolutely.
and so I think it all just came together because I think the right people got involved, and sometimes resistance in my experience, um, is an indication that this is probably what you should be doing.
Again, the
I think
walking
so.
contradiction, like we talked about, and on top
Exactly.
of it, I mean, many people hail Steins Gate's dub as one of the best just ever. Period. So I think that level of investment and involvement really shines through even to this day. That people
And
can go back to and say
and
that,
again,
yeah, this
I
is
think that
one
I
of the
think the
best.
dub is really good because the material is just so easy for an actor
Mhm.
to get
Yeah.
swept up in. It'd be hard to screw it up if you're sensitive to what the show is trying to do.
Well, yeah.
Like I said, the original is a perfect show. It's a perfect show and would be perfect if I had absolutely nothing to do with it already. And the Japanese version is so good. Everything about it is amazing. So like really
Mhm.
all our job was to just kind of be fans of it. And
Yeah. Well, we've talked to localizers on this show, and I don't think that that's a role that needs to be taken for granted. It's such an important part of it, and people can obviously miss the mark when it comes or completely misinterpret the material when they don't
it
have that
happens.
level of we have to be able to get down and say that we're not going to be able to know exactly better than the original writers.
Mm,
We need to be able to listen to what that material is and to
yeah.
take the essence of that and how can we do this in a way that other audiences will understand, right? So
Yeah, I agree.
just as
Well
important.
said.
So
Well
you
said.
guys made that happen. So we're
I
going to
hope
go in for a
so.
quick reset. We'll be right back. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
And we'll come back right back in part two. We've got a few more questions. So thank you.
Sweet. Awesome.
And we're back. When last we left off, I spilled the Dr. Pepper. We waited 10 minutes thanks to Zoom's new policy, organization plot, Shirley. And we hopefully both went to the bathroom. I did. I know I did.
Always.
Always,
Always.
always.
Every
Yes, for
chance I
those for
get.
the voiceover bathroom breaks. Very important.
Hey, at my age, you go to the bathroom every time you can.
Truth. Even at mine. All right, so we're getting straight back into it. We don't have too many actual questions for this interview, thankfully. How did you warm up in the booth when you're ready to do a character? We asked this with Trina. Just if you want to do a quick rundown for just any sort of techniques that you use.
I, you know, I, I'm not that responsible.
And
Uh,
neither am I. That's why I'm
I
laughing.
tend to. It's funny because my husband Brandon, does this just as much, if not more, than I do, and
Mhm.
you could hear him before a session going around the house, being like, like doing all the things, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I should probably do that at some point. My big thing is I make sure I'm hydrated. But I don't like do a lot of like warm ups. I probably should.
But
But I really don't. I don't really have a routine, which my husband never ever tires of criticizing me for. He's like, I'm like, sorry.
we're gonna
Um,
feel this in a few years for sure. Absolutely.
oh yeah, oh yeah. But
And so
I do try
feeling
to. I do try to. When I've got time, especially in the early days, I would always like read copy and be like, let me just read the back of the cereal box or
yeah,
whatever, just
right.
to kind of blah, blah, blah,
Just
kind
to
of
kind of have
loosen
the
up the
nice, yeah,
instrument.
right, exactly.
But I'm not one of those people that like walks around being like
Right.
wah, brr." I I
Just
feel
had to
fairly
ask now.
ridiculous. So.
Oh yeah, you guys met on while recording Steins Gate, correct? I do believe that's something you have mentioned in the past, or is that
Not
true? Or-
sort of. We met around that time. I
Oh, I
don't.
see.
I
Okay.
think I was. I think I might have. I honestly, I get the time. I get timelines mixed up.
Mm.
But I know it was around that time. We met in 2011 at a convention where I was a guest and he was interpreting for the Japanese guests,
Oh,
and
wow.
we just hit it off and figured out we both lived in Dallas, and so we're like, oh, let's be friends, and then here we are, 3 years later. Um, but yeah, we connected over Steinsgate because briefly in 2012 or 2013, excuse me, 2013, he moved to Japan for work and lived in the heart of Akihabara,
Wow. Yeah.
where of course the story takes place, and they used so many real locations
Hmm.
in the show that he was watching it, going, "Oh my God, this is all." This is
One on
all I
one.
can
Yeah.
walk. I can walk to this place from here. There's the K book store. There's the here. Those steps near the train. That's right here. And he'd give me little virtual tours of them, and we'd
Aw.
talk online. And so we definitely bonded over Steins Gate. But
Yeah.
I think we were already done recording by the time he and I met. I think it was they're so close together. I kind of conflate
Right.
them, and because
Hmm.
he connected to it, because
Hmm.
he was living in
Yeah.
Akihabara 2 years or a year or so later, and
Yeah.
watching the dub, it all gets timey wimey, wibbly wobbly in my
No.
head.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very timey wimey stuff, right? Did you get a chance to go visit him actually over there while he was living there? Or
I did not. I have never been. We hope to go on our honeymoon at some point.
yeah.
That's the plan. Because he wants to. And that's definitely one of our stops. We're going to Akihabara and like hanging out and getting pictures at all the
Oh
locations
yeah.
that are
I
still
can't wait.
around. Yeah, I mean, I will bring a lab coat.
Yes, 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 yes. Has to happen. So, and as you, I guess we'll do a quick social media plug break if you want
Mm,
to
mm,
on
mm.
that topic. If you want to shout out your social media really quick, briefly, in case people want to follow that.
I'm kind of, I'm not as active on social media as I
Okay.
probably ought to be, but I do, I have
Right.
Twitter or X or whatever the hell they're calling it now.
Yeah.
In this timeline, I'm on Twitter. It's all as J Michael Tatum. I'm on Instagram as J Michael Tatum, and I have a TikTok. My husband made me get a TikTok during the pandemic, and I made some cooking videos. They were nice. I might do some more. It's been a while. It has been a while since I've posted, because nothing makes me feel like an old man like TikTok.
Right. Same.
And that's about it. I don't have a lot of other.
I'm getting the impression that your husband is more of the social media person. As noted, we were trying to arrange this interview, and I saw the picture of him dragging you to the Taylor Swift concert. So I had to ask about that because I was at that like the day after. It was just a weird coincidence. We were talking.
Yeah, he's a big Taylor Swift fan. And I am less so. Uh, but he was like, "Hey, man, let's
Same.
go to this guy. It'll be a big event," and
I was driving.
it was, and so I went
It
to
was
it, and
big, yeah.
I played, I pretended to be like, ugh, whatever, but it was honestly quite good. I mean, it's not really my music, to be honest with you, but I can appreciate a hell of a performance regardless. And
Yeah.
man, she put on a
3.5 hours is not a short amount
great
of
show.
time. That
Three and
was
a half
actually not.
hours. And
Yeah.
like at one point, I was like, I don't think I've ever been to a show this long
Yeah.
without a real intermission. And at some point, like I'm like, oh, there's no encore. But then it occurred to me, I'm like, oh, what could she possibly sing? She's
Yeah.
literally gone through her entire catalog. But yeah, I mad respect for Taylor Swift. That was a hell of a show, and I
Yeah.
never ever thought I would say those words.
Same.
'Cause
Exactly the
it's just,
same
it's
boat.
just it's not really my music. I didn't grow
Yeah.
up with it.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
more of a snooty classical jazz sort of
Right.
person.
Oh, gotcha. Mhm.
And it's just whatever. So no one
Yeah.
likes me.
No, there's a lot of
Um,
great jazz cafes in Japan when you go, so
oh,
definitely
I
try
can't
to.
wait.
I'll
I
send you some
know. I know. Oh, I
recommendations.
can't wait. I can't wait. But yeah. Taylor
That's
Swift
gonna be awesome.
definitely worth going to. Definitely worth going to. I'm glad I did it. I did it once,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and now
Yep. Now, never again. Yep.
I
Yep.
have
It's off the bucket
so
list.
many
Same.
favors
Same.
to call in from my husband when the time comes.
I will be sending you recommendations in Japan for the specific jazz club that plays Taylor Swift covers. So look out for that. You can never
I,
escape it.
I hope it's an Akihabara.
Yeah, it sure is. And if it's not there, we're gonna create it. So don't
We're
worry.
gonna call
We'll
it Queen
make
Maze.
adjustments. Queen Queen Taze, yeah. uh, Speaking of references, as the main writer for the series, a lot of the references that were made regarding Japanese social media
Mm-hmm.
had to be changed so that way international
Yeah.
audiences could understand what the heck was going on, because sometimes
Yeah.
when I show my friends the original sub, they're very confused, and I have to pause this thing, and I have to be the tips list if you play the visual novel, and except in real life, and I explain, oh yeah, at Chan, it's like a 2chan thing, right? And
Yeah. Right. Right. So yeah, that was funny. We were given the rare license to kind of rework the references in a way that would speak to American audiences who otherwise would not, who would miss so much of the story. Because the thing is, and with writing and adaptation, it's a very fine line between changing a line's meaning and changing just kind of the superficialities of it so that it hits better in a different language. Because certain things just don't gloss.
Mhm.
There's not like a 1-to-1 ratio between a Japanese utterance and an English one. There's not. I mean, sometimes there is, but very rarely. And so with that, we thought, man, we don't, especially with these moments where there's humor and the idea, we don't want, the part of your brain that responds to a puzzle is very different than the one that responds to a joke or an emotional, discovery.
Mhm.
And those are the parts I want engaged as, that I want you to engage in as an audience. And so I don't want anything to take you out of it. I don't want you to be in the middle of a really intense scene and suddenly be like, wait, what did she just say? What does that mean? Because now you're not paying attention to what you're supposed to be paying attention to, because, we as Americans, as a different country, we can't, uh, we wouldn't know those references. And so the licensors gave us, carte blanche to like, hey, as long as it doesn't change the story or the characters or the substance of what they're saying, feel
Mhm.
free to pull in any references that an American would likely get that kind of serves the same purpose. And so Patrick and I, we had this whole thing planned out. We're like, well, let's make references to Doctor Who and to Star Trek because that's very likely the sort of thing, and dozens of other things, by the way, not just
Right.
those. That were just probably maybe the two oldest nerddom examples
Kick
that
is
we
a
could pull
lie,
from
right?
our from our
It's a little
own lives.
Shakespearean too,
Over a lot of Shakespeare because I'm a big Shakespeare nerd, so I had to
yeah.
throw that in
Mhm.
too. And and there's all kinds of stuff. So we got to have fun with it, which was great. I think it allowed us as actors to and as writers, of course, to really tell the story in English in a way that was that got at the substance of it better than a true quote unquote literal translation would have been able to do. I think audiences would have responded to the show very, very differently had we kept all the obscure references
Mhm.
to Japanese stuff in.
Mhm.
So I'm very thankful that they gave us that rare treat to do that. They don't often do that, and I can completely understand why, because it is very easy to run with that and go too far afield, and suddenly you're losing the substance of the show and making it about something else. So, but I think we did a pretty good job of towing that line and being like, okay, we're gonna make this a reference here, but we'd always look at what's the function of that reference, like what is it, what's the coin of the realm, as it were, like why are they saying this nerd thing. Does it have to be that thing, or can they get the same point across using a metaphor from another, fun franchise? And truth is, they could. We all speak nerd. Nerd is universal.
Yes.
It's not the idioms themselves. It's the thing the idiom is kind of getting at.
Try
And
to
so as long
convey,
as we,
right? Yeah.
yeah, so as long as we
Mhm.
focused on that, a rose by any other name. Well,
Yeah. Mhm.
there's my one per
There's your one
interview.
Shakespeare. There's your quota. There's your quota. Gotta check it off. Yeah. So how did the process between the series and then you guys came back for the movie, correct? Right after
We
that.
did, we did. Yeah.
Were you involved with the
Um,
writing for that one too? I know,
yes,
yeah.
yes. I
Mhm.
yeah, I wrote that. Wrote the movie. Emily Neves wrote Steins Gate Zero.
Right. Mhm.
Very accomplished writer, and I think she did really phenomenal work. In fact, I think she was a little terrified to take it on
Mhm.
because at the studio, the show that those are mine and Patrick's scripts had a reputation for being a very tough act to follow, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think we're actually whatever. Um, but people really loved them, and so they were like, "Oh my god!" And so, and I really hadn't met Emily, uh, but once or twice in passing before she was given the responsibility to write Steins Gate Zero, and and I was so impressed, so in fact overwhelmingly impressed with her work on that show that afterwards I kind of came to her and I was like, "Thank you for making this a far better experience than it might have been otherwise."
Mm,
And we've been very good friends ever since.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
A
she was
small
great.
circle of
Patrick was
voice
great.
actors. Hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I worked on the movie as well as a writer, and yeah, this, yeah, my stank is all over that thing.
Yeah, I heard it was very emotionally
For
involved for
better
you
or
to.
worse, you know. Yeah, yeah.
For Zero, how would you say you differed Okabe's portrayal? I know it's naturally as a much darker timeline. You kind of alluded to that
Mm,
being
mm.
a rougher process for you. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was. It turns out I was kind of in the perfect place to play him because of what was going on in my own life at the
Mhm.
time, which almost compelled me to not reprise the role.
Mhm.
Uh, and I won't go into too much detail about that because honestly, it's quite boring. But suffice to say, it was a really rough time, and I was like, I didn't want to. I just like this is not the time to do a challenge like this, especially knowing what I knew about it. I'm like, oh, it's going to be like we're right out of the gate going to be like the darkest version of Okabe that we've
Mhm.
seen. Where we're gonna like start with, oh my god, the worst possible thing happened. It's this now. We're here,
Mhm.
and I just didn't. Oh my god. So in terms of my process, really, I just kind of. it, it was actually much more straightforward than the first time around because I was like, oh, I'm depressed. Oh, this show makes me fucking depressed. I'm in a perfect headspace to play this character right now. So it worked. It's much more, it was harrowing, but much more straightforward. And in hindsight, I don't think I could have emotionally survived being the writer and the lead in Zero.
Mhm. Yeah,
And so
that.
I am very happy that Emily Neves took one for the team, as it were, and wrote those scripts because I know it wasn't an easy thing for her either.
Now
It
Emily's
couldn't have
depressed.
been.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're all depressed. We're all living on the most depressed world line you
Oh,
could
brother.
possibly imagine. Um, yeah, yeah. So it was really. It's like playing depressed. Turns out playing depressed Okabe is real easy when you're depressed.
Who knew? What a concept.
It's kind of therapeutic in a way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was really funny. So, my experience of working on Zero was rather different because Chris George's approach to directing is rather different than Colleen's. They're both fine, in fact, brilliant directors. Um, but Chris just has a different way about him. He loves to lighten things with humor a bit more than Colleen tends to. Colleen is very in the moment and very, not intense is not quite the right word, but extremely focused. And Chris George is those things as well. But if it gets a little too much, he's a guy's guy. He's gonna be like, ah, joke, and everyone kind of laughs and which can be very distracting if you're trying to stay, keep with the momentum of a very emotional scene and not kind of break away every cut and be like, okay, let's refind it now because we had a joke, but he was really good about kind of letting me ride out the emotion. I mean, I had a moment where I cried in the booth, on cue for a scene, and they just kind of let me do it. And they just kind of after the we kept rolling because I was like, yeah, I gotta get this out. I can't just turn it off. And he did, and I
Mhm.
was like, thank you for that. That was really awesome. Thank you for not making it awkward. He was like, thank you for making it very awkward. It was awesome. It always felt like when
Yeah.
we were done, it always felt like we just like come back from an AA meeting together or something. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Very emotional experience for all of us, I think.
Hmm. Great directors and people to work with in this industry are just they're worth their weight in gold because they can make the
Oh yeah.
experience something either you're going to dread or something that you're going to be able to. I mean, those are the best working conditions in your case, where
Mhm.
it's like you feel like close enough with the people that you can make these
Yeah,
sorts of
that you have that
yeah
kind of that
choices.
familiar, that familiarity with them, that family atmosphere, I should
Yeah.
say, which is great. But it's also wonderful working with directors and engineers who are fans of the material, that know it
Hmm.
well, and are like really have almost kind of a reverence for it, um, because it makes you feel like what you're doing matters, and you're all in this together. That's my performance in both, iterations are every bit owed to what everyone else was doing. I'm, no man is an island, and me certainly not. And so the things that worked about that worked because Patrick's writing worked incredibly well. Colleen and Chris George were both really on point. You know, the time coders, the engineers, everyone, like they just created this atmosphere and sustained it, which is very hard, I might add, very very hard in a work environment when there's deadlines and technical malfunctions from time to time. You know, it's very hard to maintain that level and also be professional. And they did a great freaking job. I think everything good about the dub really comes from the crew that worked on it. You know, I mean, give a competent actor, an even halfway competent actor, the same material and the same environment, and they'll turn in a performance every bit as good. I promise you. So, like, yeah, it's my shout out to them. Worth their weight in gold, indeed.
Yeah. I'm glad we actually have a chance to, like, in these interviews, to bring attention to that, because those are the roles that don't always get acknowledged or talked about. They're
Yeah.
intrinsically important to this sort of industry, and to be able to make that magic in the booth, you need those sorts of people on hand and ready
Absolutely.
to go.
More so, I think, than anybody. You know. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I could ramble about that for hours. We actors, we get a lot of love because I think we're the most kind of forward-facing brand ambassadors, to use a horrible corporate phrase, you know, of a franchise, I suppose. But you know, we're in reality, and I'm not trying to undercut my colleagues at all. They're all brilliant at what we do, but the nature of the job is such that actors are last ones in, first ones out.
Yeah.
You know,
Pretty
I come in
disposable
for
some
you
ways.
know,
Yeah.
2 or 3 hours and give my heart, but like for but the director's there all goddamn day and doing the same thing with multiple actors, and the writers are with the show for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, if not months. You know, and actors, I'm not saying actors have it easier, but they get more of they get a break. The directors and the engineers and the writers don't. They have to sit in that. That's their reality for however long it takes to get through the show. So yeah, they're that's the dirty work. That's where that happens.
Right.
And we don't make we need to make them more visible than they are currently, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But
In light
anyway,
of the strikes and everything, it's good to be able to
hell yes,
give them the
hell
credit
yes.
where it's due too. Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
rising tide carries all ships right now. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm, mm,
and
mm.
on that note, I do want to bring a little bit more optimism at the end. I was wondering if you had any guesses as to where you think our lab members end up in the future. Do you think that, what does their future look like to you?
Oh, goodness. I mean, I love the idea of Christina and Okabe being married and having kids. Maybe that's a little too sentimental, but certainly at least being a couple and
There's a
going
universe
on,
out there with that.
yeah,
There's a world
there's a
line.
universe out there with
There's a
them in
world
it.
line.
And but I don't know. It's hard to say. There's such complicated characters with so much talent among them that it's hard to know. They could end up pretty much wherever they set their minds to. I hope that Daru ends up with, I mean, we do know that Daru ends up, and I don't it's too much of a spoiler. I won't give that away. But we do know who Daru ends up, at least in one iteration. But yeah, I mean, I think all of them, at least those among them who have a talent for it, will live happily ever after. I hope. They certainly deserve it after everything they've been through.
Right. Have you heard of the game that's already been announced, Steins question mark? That's purportedly supposed to come out in like 2025 or something like that, 2026. The visual novel for it.
Oh God, I'm terrified. No.
You'll never escape it until.
No, it's true. I never will. It's so funny. So I know earlier in the interview I was talking about this beautiful, fully working. Well, obviously not fully working, but working.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully not working. Divergence meter.
Yeah.
And that this wonderful guy named Steven gave me, and you turn it on and the numbers would change and the cathode tubes. It was really, really cool. But in 2021, at the height of the pandemic and everything else, those numbers, when I turned it on once, just shifted to 666 and have stayed there. And I'm like, I really should track Steven down and ask him if that was by design or if we're fucked. This is a true story. I should have brought the booth with me. I really should have, and I kicked myself for not doing it. But yeah, it's it's got the full array of cathodes and cathode ray tubes, and all those numbers, and suddenly just these three, and they just happen to all be sixes, and I'm like, I showed it to Brandon one afternoon, and he was like, "Whoa!"
Why was that the default? Why was that the default? That's a little.
Was it the default, or is that
Or
the timeline
the
we're
things
on?
change. If you want to find that for the end of the interview, by all means.
I might could do that actually. Let me see. I'll go find it. But yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And we expect you to come back for. I know they're starting to dub the visual novels as they have with Anonymous Code recently, so hopefully we'll see you back for that one. Yeah,
Ooh,
a good chance.
Oh, I'm a little terrified.
Work. Yeah, no. This really is work for you.
Next year is going to be a weird year for like a lot of shows coming back, as I understand it. And I'm like, cool. Guess I'm never going to
retire. I guess I'm never going to retire.
I'm never going to find Steinsgate. Oh my god.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I think we have all the questions that we've had prepared in this case. Yeah, unless you wanted to do the speed round that I subjected Trina to, because that was hilarious.
Why not? I like a speed round. Let's do a
speed round. I'm just gonna reuse the last ones, and I'm gonna give credit to everyone who asked them, because we had a bunch of great people who asked them. Pulak Kumar on YouTube asks, "Are you an @channeler?"
I don't know what that means, so no.
Okay. The reference is lost on both the voice actors so far, so we will ask that every time we.
I don't know. I am 47 years old.
Wes Dolful on Reddit asks, "Is it possible to make a time machine?"
I hope not.
That is the in-character answer. Light of Life 227 or Not a Dang Sucker 64, thanks for the username, asks, "Explain wormholes or curve black holes." Explain one or the other.
I think it's like, oh god. It's like a punch through the fabric of space-time that allows you to get between any 2 points in the space-time continuum that aren't continuous. It's like you take a sheet of paper, right? And you've seen Event Horizon, and you poke a hole over here, and you poke a hole over here, and you take the sheet of paper, and it's like a time machine allows you to bend space-time, and then boom, now those holes are lined up, and you can go through them.
You're hired. Noah Novels.
I don't know if that's true. That's how I understand it. I am not a physicist.
Don't write in. There's going to be someone in the YouTube comments that says, "Oh, well, actually,
I'm sure.
Compress everything."
I'm sure. They're like, actually, it's this. And I'm like, oh,
okay. Oh, yeah, well, thanks.
Give me a break. Like, I've just now caught up to Skinwalker Ranch.
Noah Novels on YouTube asks, "If Okabe had a quirk in My Hero Academia, since you play Tenya Ida, what would it be?"
I think it would be creating different versions of himself.
So we can just have them deal with all the shenanigans.
Yeah, he could be like paper dolls. He just create like infinite numbers of himself to thwart the enemy.
And Chris G. Link on Twitter asks, "Have you ever been interested in playing the Steinsgate visual novel or any of the games and shows in the rest of the Science Adventure series beyond Steinsgate?"
I have been, and one day I would very much like to. I'm not ready yet.
Yeah,
not ready yet, but I'll get there. In my old age, I shall play them.
Cool. Well, that's pretty much it. If you want to go dig up that,
let me go see. Let me go find it. Make sure it's still like that. The battery still works. So give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. No worries. Take your time. We'll cut away to that if anything, and if not, I can just ramble on right now. Yeah. So funny enough, Taylor Swift's birthday was the day before we released this interview. So all the references are all the different world lines converging right now. Yeah, it's all making sense. We got the little pin here. I'll just show that off. My Steinsgate bag is over there in the corner. One day I'll do like an unbagging of all the Steinsgate stuff I've collected, because I personally don't even collect anything Steinsgate, or I don't collect much anime stuff at all. I would be lying to say if I don't collect any of it at all, but I do mostly just get Steinsgate stuff because it's harder to come by. Whenever I've run into it, I will just pick it up, and I think I've shown off my figure in the past before on this channel. So, but I think this is going to be the biggest flex. We're segueing everything. Oh yeah, I completely realized that Taylor Swift's birthday is the day before that we're releasing this interview. 'Cause it's tying together. It's all
Why
coming
not?
together. All right.
Okay, so I just turned it on for the first time in months, and it's no longer doing the thing I said it was doing.
Oh.
So maybe
Now
that
we're
means
really fucked.
something. I don't know, but this is okay. So this is what it does. It's so cool. But like, check this out, right? This
All
is
right.
the thing. Like, look at this. Look
Shout
at
out
this
to
thing. Look at this
Steven.
beautiful thing. And this is like, yeah. Shout out to Steven. But like, I can't. I think I need to recharge it or something. He sent me a manual, which I haven't read. But I will. But this is like, see, it kind of does this, and usually the numbers will kind of, if they're stuck in this now, they're not supposed to be stuck. Every time I hit this little button back
Oh.
here, they're supposed to the switch. They're supposed to move around. So it's stuck on 436.46.
Well, that's just
What does
the
it
world line we're on.
mean?
That's it.
Oh my God, I don't
This
know.
is the world line we're on.
Oh, there it does. It changes a little bit. There
it
we go.
changed
Okay,
a little bit.
it does change, but they're changing solidly. They're still keeping that. No, see, it's so weird. It's so weird.
Is it supposed to be the date? Or 37? The 37th of April is my favorite date.
Right. I don't know. Maybe in the future they
Oh,
calculate.
oh.
Oh, here we go. Here we
Oh,
go.
okay.
Okay, they're doing.
Shout out to Steven. Steven,
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
so
watching
cool.
this.
It worked far better when I first had it.
He needs help,
It
Steven.
It needs to be charged, and it hasn't been plugged in for a while.
Michael
so
needs help, Steven. Send help.
Clearly, but yeah, isn't this the coolest thing? Like, check
Yeah,
it
it
out.
is.
Check it out.
It is
It's
so cool.
badass.
It's not.
It's one
I've
of my
seen
favorite
so.
things.
Yeah, like yeah, the community is just absolutely nuts when it comes to making stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've seen like so many other cosplayers make like some like their own version, and it's just cool every time to see it's DIY and yeah,
It's
that's
so
dedication right there.
It's freaking amazing. And he wrote
need to
this
make my own
whole
at some point,
thesis
so.
with it, this whole paper with it, this
Wow.
whole instruction manual, which I still have. And
Yeah,
it's funny, he gave it to me in this really beautiful, like metal hard shell case.
yeah.
So it looked like I was walking around with a bomb or like stolen jewels. I was like, thanks, Steven. I don't know. I'm gonna burn this.
Hopefully it was a home convention. You didn't have to fly back. Was through airport security with that thing?
Yeah, it was crazy, right? It's crazy. But yeah, but worth it. One of my prized
Absolutely
possessions.
worth it.
I love
100% worth
so
it.
Thank you, Steven. You're awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Michael. We had
my
a
pleasure, Preston.
great time just chatting with you. This has been Cinepresso signing out, and this is J. Michael Tatum. Thank you again for your time. We really appreciate
you, my friend. Thank
And
you.
we'll
May
see
you
you on the
find
next
Steinsgate.
it. We will find Steinsgate together. Thank you. And as you know, El Sai Kongru.
El Sai Kongru.
Thank you so much.